What's going on? So for this, I'm going to be taking us to a place called Core Gaming. It's in Salem, New Hampshire, and it's a retro game store that has a bunch of titles that I remember playing in my childhood. And if we have any luck, they'll have the thing that I'm actually here to pick up, because I saw it online. They made a post about it the other day. They have a copy of Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes for the GameCube, and I'm kind of hoping that it's here. We're going to go in, we're going to find out if it's there or not, and with any luck, we'll get some sick inside the store footage. Come and join me on a nice little fun adventure, yeah?
One thing about living in New Hampshire is that sometimes the driving can be one of the best parts of the whole trip. Here we have the main entrance to the store. Didn't exactly get a super great establishing shot for it, but I can promise you that this is Core Gaming. So, walking down the first main aisle here, we have our first class case, in which we can see a bunch of amiibo and random smaller handhelds and the like. Lots of PlayStation Vitas, which are becoming more and more of a collector's item for the mod capabilities. You can also see some Tiger handhelds and even Sega Game Gear, along with some new reproduction Game & Watch systems. Those even predate the NES. Here we see a bunch of in-box Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and even some Game Boy Advance games. That Legend of Zelda title is going for quite the pretty penny. Love the humor on the sealed copies here. As a fun little bonus, we even have some imported games from Japan. These aren't exactly compatible with US handhelds, generally due to how each region is coded, but if you have a Japanese console, you'd be in luck. Lots of good titles never quite made it over to the US market. Weirdly enough, I don't often find very many in-box Game Boy games, mostly because lots of people ended up tossing the cardboard ones once they opened them up, myself included back in the day. They have a lot of interesting and strange things on display here, up to and including this Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire Eon ticket. I have no clue what that is, but if you were looking for one, they have it for now, anyway. Oh, now here's some stuff that's even from before my time. We have some Atari. These are even harder to find given that they were a late 70s and very early 80s thing. Here we have some collectibles, some statues, small figures, dice, fancy dice for all your D&D needs. Aha, now here, this is cool. They have some fun stuff in here, some demo discs, a Halo 3 media kit, and the Killer Instinct soundtrack, just to say a few things. That soundtrack came with the game when it was released on Super Nintendo back in the day. It's called Killer Cuts. That was an awesome freebie for sure. They even have a Hyrule passport. What a weird, neat little thing to find. Okay, now here we go. This is where some of the real good finds are. The PS1 collection here at this store is pretty great. A lot of the stuff in here is still in its original jewel case, and some even still in their original shrink wrapping. They have Mega Man, Resident Evil, Tekken, a bunch of Final Fantasy games, even Chrono Cross. Castlevania Symphony of the Night, what a rare find. It's still on its black label too. That's one of the very first prints. And moving on down to here, we have even more imports. Still, the basic rules apply on these. Gotta have either a Japanese PlayStation 1 or a modded PS1 just to play them. Still though, lots of neat games that never quite made it stateside. A lot of stuff everywhere in the store. It's just filled top to bottom, full of everything that you might possibly want to try and collect, or just, have a good time looking at. Over in this area here, we have some of the Super Nintendo goodness, including a copy of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time, signed by the creator, or at least one of the creators, Kevin Eastman. Decent collection of in-box and still shrink-wrapped games, including Donkey Kong, Mega Man X, and Street Fighter II here on the top shelf, with a bunch of sports games. The loose games are an impressive lot, to say the least. Lots of good titles still to be found in there, which is great, because, I still need to grow my SNES collection. Now, right around the corner from that is an entire shelf dedicated to imports. You got Super Famicom, PlayStation 2, even some old Atari games over here. Definitely a lot to look at and choose from if you have an imported or modded console. Walking down one of the main aisles here, you can see it's not just classic games that they also have a fairly large selection of new titles as well. Lots of PS4, PS5, and Xbox One games to pick up if, you're looking for them. Directly across from the newer stuff here, we have some DS and 3DS games. The last time I was here, they had some Castlevania titles that I managed to pick up. It's always worth the look, you never know what you might find here. Every time I come into the store, there's always something new that catches my eye. Take, for instance, this spot right here. This is a bunch of big box collector edition games from a wide range of consoles. Everything from the Xbox 360 and Switch to the PS4 and even some stuff from Limited Run, if you know what they're about. Speaking of things that are just a little bit weird, while I was walking through, I saw this wall of Funko Pops. Now, usually Funko Pops aren't exactly my thing, but these are a little different. These are Funko Soda Pops. Not exactly sure what the flavors are, but they have a ton of different characters up on the cans. Up to and including some very, very old cereal mascots. Looking at you, Quake. Now here's some old school literature. It's a shelf that has a bunch of old strategy guides and other accompanying books for various games. I actually used to have this specific book for Final Fantasy VII when I was a kid. My dad got it when he picked up the game back in the day. They didn't have the unofficial version, just this Brady Games official one, which, don't get me wrong, is super cool. But you gotta be careful when reading this one. It has some spoilers in it. So, read at your own risk. Now, walking through the store, I found very specific things that caught my eye. This being one of them. This here is Night Trap, and believe it or not, but this game, along with Mortal Kombat, caused such a problem back in the day that it's why we have the ESRB today. By today's standards, though, this game comes off as super campy and not very scary at all. Still pretty neat to see, though. Oh, and there's also a flyer for an old Dreamcast kiosk, so if you or anyone you know wants one, Core Gaming got you covered. Over near the front of the store, they have a fairly large TCG section. If you don't feel like picking up some games, maybe you want to pick up some cards. They got just about everything you could ever want to collect here. Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! The list goes on. They also have this weird little center section here that has a bunch of weird little odds and ends, more figurines and other collectibles, but also some specific steelbook cases and maybe a couple other things. So, if you're looking to round out your collection of some kind, maybe they have you covered here. Now this is kind of neat. They have an internal competition to see what member of staff has the best taste and, I guess, sales? From what I can gather, they pick up just about any game they think is good and put it into these little baskets. There are some rules, though. You can't pick obvious good games, and you can't push your own selection. People just kind of walk by the basket, take a look, and if they think they like one, they can grab it, and then they get marked up on the top there. Here we have a giant wall of PlayStation 2 games. Lots of stuff to sift through here, but sometimes you might be able to find a diamond in the rough. For example, here we have The Bouncer, an old 2000s beat-em-up, and Fatal Frame 2, a horror game that centers around ghosts and photography. Sometimes you find weird things like this disc full of codes specifically for Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Neat, but very strange. Now, everything else aside, this is why we're here, the GameCube section. This has a ton of great things to pick up. Ikaruga, Mario Party, Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 0, Mega Man Collection, Eternal Darkness, Metroid Prime 2, Paper Mario, and of course, Metal Gear Solid, the Twin Snakes. This section has so many games on it, it is ridiculous, and they're all fairly good. Rounding up the trip here, and we're up at the front area. This is where they have all their consoles that they're going to sell. Switches, Nintendo 64s, GameCubes, even some region-based versions, so you can play those import games. They have a ton to choose from up here. It's rather impressive, actually.
So, just wrapped up inside of Core Gaming. I got everything that I that I wanted to get. On top of that, a couple other things. I'll definitely be showing those when I get back. But for now, let's head home. Well, we have made it back. I'm in the middle of taking off some of the stickers on here. I'm sure you can see this right there. That's always a fun part. It's always a pain trying to get these stickers off of here, because like EB Games doesn't exactly exist anymore, and much rather than see a big old promo on the box when I go to reach for it, for a company that doesn't necessarily exist anymore, I believe they got bought by GameStop back in the day. I'd much rather just see the game art. I know this game had a history with somebody else at some point. Case in point, that EB sticker, I'm pretty sure was on here since the game launched back in 2004. So that sticker has been on this case for roughly 20 years. 19 exactly at the time of the recording here, but we round up. I can't get it. It's still on. Look at this. It's still on there. Oh my God. I'll pretty it up again later. So, what did I get while we were at Core Gaming? The cat doesn't know. The cat has no answers. I picked up, as I'm sure you saw, a copy of Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. Like I said, this came out for the GameCube back in the day. And then you see Samus. It's a very nice holographic cover that extends to both sides. As far as I can tell, aside from the sticker residue on the outside of the case, the game is in great condition. Unfortunately, there's no manual in there. And a fun little thing about these GameCube games is they're on really tiny discs. Like, this is incredibly small. We're going to jump into some PS2 action. Here is a copy of Fatal Frame 2. This is a horror game. This also came out in... It does not. But this one has a manual, so that's fun. PlayStation 2 games are printed on, of course, DVDs for the most part. This one, the booklet is in actually really good shape. So that's a win for Core Gaming on that one. That is excellent. That was always half the fun of getting a game back in the day, is getting in the car and reading the book. Here's the disc. As you can see, it's in pretty good shape. Good, solid DVD game. I'll be looking forward to firing that one up later. This one I got more or less for the meme. This is a game called The Bouncer. Some of you out there may or may not know about it. This is a game from Squaresoft. Came out back in the day. And back in the day being like, around the 2000s. 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. The character designs were done by, I think it was Tetsuya Nomura, who does Kingdom Hearts. I'm sure you can see this is, not quite Sora on the cover. So that's fun. This is not the original case, and this is not the original cover for the case. It's a copy of it for sure. You can see right around here is a bit of white where they printed off the label and they took like a paper cutter to it, chopped it down to fit the case. And there's nothing wrong with that. This particular case had this holographic sticker on it that you can barely kind of see. This holographic sticker was for a baseball game, Major League Baseball, and those were on all the games. I think even still today, if you get like a case, you buy a copy of MLB The Show or whatever physically, it'll probably still have that sticker on it somewhere. So what they did was they took an old sports game case, they printed off a fresh-ish label, and they slipped it in there, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that because it's a genuine PS2 case. You can tell because it has the memory card holder right there. And that's something that a lot of collectors typically do. Not the case with this PS2 version of Fatal Frame. This one looks to be like an original copy because the border up here is like 100% up to the cover. And this was the big one that we went there for. This was entirely why I made this trip. It's entirely why I went there in the first place. Metal Gear Solid, The Twin Snakes. This game came out in 2004 alongside Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, which is what I showed off originally. This game is ridiculous. I'm just gonna flat out say, Metal Gear in general is ridiculous. This particular version is extra. Just 100% extra. All the cutscenes were redone, the voice acting was redone, everything was redone basically from the ground up. And the game itself is ludicrous in terms of presentation. Not to mention like the gameplay changes that they made that absolutely break this game in half, because it wasn't designed originally with what they ended up putting in here for this particular remake. But it is, without a doubt, one of the more, I wouldn't say rare, I mean it is technically rare, right? Like I had a hard time finding it, but it's unique. Let's just say it's unique. And that is that. This one doesn't have a booklet either, which is unfortunate, but it does have 2 little GameCube discs, which is cute because the original PlayStation version also came on 2 discs. So it kind of continues that. I think this might actually be 2 different prints. Crazy. Yeah, the disc is in good shape, so for the most part. The front of it has like this weird crackle on it that definitely shouldn't be there, right? Like this one, being disc 1, gets the lion's share of play, just because that's where the biggest chunk of the story is. But this one, like the coloration is just a little bit off. This one's like a lighter gray. This one's like a greenish kind of gray. It's bizarre. This might be an amalgamation of 2 different copies that got put into the same thing, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, especially when you're buying games secondhand like this. It's just funny to see those weird little nitpicks, you know? As a general rule of thumb, you always want to make sure that the games you buy are actually working. Excuse the mess, it's a little crowded around here, but this is where everything kind of happens. I'm gonna go ahead and power this on. I already put the game in there. Oh, that doesn't get much more. Ooh, progressive mode, sure. Doesn't get much more nostalgic than that. Hey, if you made it this deep into the video, I want to thank you. I know it's kind of a long one. We're looking at about 20 minutes, give or take, so I appreciate you sticking by this whole time. If you like what you saw, go ahead and hit that like button, maybe subscribe if you're feeling it. Otherwise, I appreciate you watching, and with any luck, we'll have more videos like this sometime in the future. Thanks for stopping in, and I'll see you next time.